Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices is made possible in part by Allstate and the Searle Funds at the Chicago Community Trust.
Good evening y bienvenidos to Chicago Tonight Latino Voices. I'm Marissa Parr, reporter with CBS 2 Chicago and your host for tonight. Thanks for sharing part of your weekend with us. Here's what we have on the show. A shortfall of 120,000 units of affordable housing. We're looking at how neighbors are working to fix it. Plus, summertime means swimming in the lake for many Chicagoans, and a new law aims to make that even safer. And a program working to create better tree cover in Chicago's underserved neighborhoods, how you can get a free tree planted on your street.
I tell my grandson, you have to be a part of the community.
And a family-owned hardware store that's been a fixture in Pilsen for decades gets ready to hand over the keys to the next generation. First off tonight, the city has a shortfall of about 120,000 units of affordable housing, per numbers from Chicago's Department of Housing. And it's an even bigger problem in rapidly gentrifying neighborhoods like Logan Square and Pilsen, where new luxury developments are pricing longtime families out. But despite that, Lucy Gonzalez Parsons Apartments opened in May near the Logan Square Blue Line stations. It's 7 stories tall and features retail space and 100 units that are meant to be affordable. Further south, the Pilsen Housing Cooperative has become a blueprint for community-led affordable housing, offering an achievable way for families to stay in the area despite gentrification happening around them. Joining us now, we have Joy Aruguete, CEO of Bickerdike Redevelopment Corporation, Amanda Cortez, a board member of the Pilsen Housing Cooperative, and Christian Diaz, Director of Housing at Palenque LSNA. Joy, to you first. It took about 8 years to get the Lucy Gonzalez Parsons apartments built and off the ground. We know that Bickerdike manages over 1,000 affordable units in the city. So tell us, how typical is this type of project in terms of the size and also the time it took to go through with the planning?
Well, it takes, unfortunately, it does take a little while to get an affordable housing project built, and that's usually because there are so many layers of financing that we need to assemble to make it affordable. And so I think it is 100 units makes complete sense on the Logan Square Blue Line station because it's a transit-oriented development, an equitable transit-oriented development. And in order, that's a place where that supports height and density, and it's right on Kedzie Avenue along the commercial corridor and just off of Milwaukee Avenue. And it's a pretty lively area. And so 100 units of affordable housing is appropriate for that site and makes a lot of sense.
Christian, we know that Palenque LSNA was part of the effort to get Parsons Apartments built. Why do you think it's important to choose Logan Square? She touched on how it's a lively area. Is there anything else that made you think that low-cost housing was really needed?
Well, Logan Square has been suffering for a long time, suffering through the impacts of displacement. And that displacement has only been exacerbated by the health crisis we've been living through with COVID-19. And despite the economic downturn of COVID-19, rents have only gone up, and more competition for housing is happening in our neighborhood. And it's really difficult for families, particularly families who have kids in schools, when their rents are raised overnight by $500 to $600. And when they look for new apartments to move into, it's impossible to find anything below $1,500, $1,600. And those units that we do find are often one bedrooms or studios that can't fit the average Latinx family. So what's really special about the Lucy Gonzalez Parsons apartments, which we just celebrated the ribbon cutting with Joy and Bickerdike a couple weeks ago, is that these are family-sized units. So not only are they affordable, but they can actually fit the average Latinx family. And this is a monument to racial equity and to a new direction that our community is taking. So we're very proud of the accomplishment. We're so happy that Bickerdike is the developer, and we hope we can see more projects like this in the future.
Well, I can see the pride on your face. Amanda, I want to come to you next, but first, the Pilsen Housing Cooperative is actually the subject of one of WTTW's firsthand series on segregation. I want to play a short clip for you.
Encontramos a Pico, que es una organización que es para artistas, que somos gente de la comunidad, gente que ha dejado raíces aquí en Pilsen, que nos reunimos para unir fuerzas y poder quedarnos aquí, tener algo propio, algo seguro, que sea nuestro, en un lugar donde ha sido tu casa por muchos años.
So obviously we heard that in Spanish. We saw the subtitles there in English. Amanda, can you tell me, how did this project come to be? When and why did you become a member?
So we have been working on Pico since 2016 as residents of the neighborhood, folks who lived next to each other. And I think we were really, really looking for an action-based sort of personal way that we could basically, say no to the displacement that was happening in Pilsen, has been happening and has been planned for a very long time. And I think that it's just a really personal and sort of political and action-based model that has really, really worked. You just heard Garen talking about how important it was for her to stay in her community. We've built up so many resources over many decades in Pilsen, and a lot of that work, I feel like when folks get displaced, it kind of goes away. And so that was our motivation for forming the Pilsen Housing Cooperative.
Joy, I have a question for you. When it comes to the barriers facing low-income housing developments, what do you feel like the biggest resistance is that you face?
Oh, there's so many. I think, first of all, just getting, talking to neighbors, getting the neighbors on board, addressing any resistance that comes up. And there's, typically in a gentrifying area, there is resistance. People have misconceptions about low and moderate income people. They don't realize that sometimes it's them or their neighbors or the people who they see every single day. They're not unknown people. And so I think that there are so many challenges, but I think none that we don't know how to navigate and none that prevent us from, building the kind of housing that's needed. We build family housing, and Lucy Gonzalez Parsons Apartments is family housing. And that means that it's going to cost a little bit more because you have more square footage in the bedrooms. The cost per unit is a bit more, and you get a lot of pushback from your funders who are used to funding smaller size developments. But it's worth every moment that we spend and the years that it takes to put this kind of a development together, because when you see those families move in, and I will tell you, we have families that have been displaced from an apartment and they can see the apartment from their new place at Lucy Gonzalez Parsons, a place that, they can depend on to raise their children and to live in the community that they've called home for so many years.
Okay, well, Amanda, Christian, we have just over a minute here. I want to ask you the same question. The biggest barriers to getting a co-op off the ground. Christian, let's go to you next.
Definitely the dominant model of housing and the housing market is one that emphasizes land use as an investment, something that should be used to generate wealth. And I think we need to change this dominant narrative to one where we see land as a benefit for people whose primary purpose is to house us and to provide stability for our communities.
I would completely agree with Christian that a new sort of, or old actually, view on land and what land ownership is for is definitely what is called for in the city of Chicago and also across the country. And I think that's something that we're definitely doing at the Pilsen Housing Co-op.
Okay, well, all three of you have been pivotal in creating a new way forward for folks and families in these neighborhoods. Our thanks to Joy Aruguete, Amado Cortez, and Christian Diaz. Well, everything about a summertime walk through the city is made better by trees. The air is cleaner, the shade offers a cool respite from the sun. But not all neighborhoods enjoy the benefits of a tree canopy, and that is something a new partnership hopes to change. The ecological advocacy group Open Lands and a new search engine are working with youth activists to help spread the word to residents about their new grant program. It's called Tree Planters. The coordinator shares why tree equity is important to the health of Chicago's communities and how you can get a new tree planted on your street for free.
Open Lands is a nature conservation organization that serves the tri-state metropolitan area. And we do work with tree planting, forestry, environmental education, land and water conservation as well. Tree equity in regards to the city of Chicago, to me, means that we want to plant more trees in the southwest side. It's our priority area because we have a high burden of pollution in this side of the city. There are a lot of impervious surfaces that absorb heat, which creates a thing called the heat island effect. Our mission is to get trees planted on this side of the city to expand the urban tree canopy because it has a lower than average tree canopy coverage. So on May 28th, we showed up here with all our tools and our trees to get trees planted around Kelly High School. We planted 4 trees, and the students actually helped us gather addresses for the Tree Planters grant. We got to plant 17 trees in the nearby neighborhood. So the Tree Planters grant is available for anybody in the city of Chicago or the south suburbs who wants to get a free tree planted in their public right-of-way in the parkway, as long as they agree to water the tree.
Who doesn't want more trees? You can find more about the Tree Planters grant on our website. Up next, what a new law means for water safety along Lake Michigan. A newly signed state law will soon require water rescue equipment along Lake Michigan in Illinois. That means things like life rings at piers, as well as warning signs in more dangerous areas. The law is the culmination of a years-long effort, one that came to a head after the drowning death of 19-year-old Miguel Cisneros, who you see right there near Pratt Pier in Rogers Park last summer. The Chicago Park District began putting up some life rings due to public pressure after his death. But once the law goes into effect next year, that equipment will be required anywhere people can enter the lake. And it took a lot of hands to make that happen. Joining us now with more, Miguel Cisneros' mother, Maria Diaz, water safety advocate, Hallie Quesada, and 49th Ward Alderwoman Maria Haddon, whose ward also includes nearly 2 miles of lakefront. Maria, I want to go to you first. You and I have spoken at length. Obviously, when it comes to your reaction, learning about the Lake Michigan Rescue Equipment Act, it's probably going to be twofold and nuanced, given the fact that you had such a heavy loss in your family last year, but also seeing something come of it. How are you feeling right now?
Well, I must say that after the law passed, I felt good. And then when we found out that it had actually been put into use this week when a person was saved on North Avenue Beach, that made my day happier. I know Mikey's legacy is being carried on, and that makes me feel very, very happy.
Yeah, and I can imagine that just knowing that he had a role in making this happen at least brings a little bit of peace. Hallie Quesada, we've been talking at length. You've been an advocate for life rings at beaches since 2018. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to really take on this fight? I know it's a traumatic moment for you.
Oh, it was awful. You know, we were on the beach when 2 13-year-olds were struggling in the water, and we were only able to save one. And that those moments when she had submerged and we were just frantically searching for anything that floated. We had 2 trained rescue divers on scene. Both of them had enough training to not go in without equipment, knowing what the currents were at that place. And it took 30 minutes for something that floats to get there after we called 911. So the urgency for this was really real, and we are grateful to finally see the life rings there.
Alderwoman Haddon, to you now. As the alderwoman of a lakefront ward, I'm curious what responsibility you think that the city and the state has in really having a role in preventing drowning incidents along the lake to begin with.
It's been, in the last couple of years, myself and our state representative have used our legislative abilities and our roles as advocates, particularly as an older person, not having direct oversight or control over the park district as a separate agency. That role that's been most useful has been as very vocal advocate and supporter of community members. And then pushing for things like hearings, right, through our legislative body in order to add pressure. And so it's sometimes challenging to not be able to change the rules yourself or make people take the immediate actions that you know are right. But it's been a real honor to be able to advocate for residents in our community more broadly on this issue and to see us get this win.
Well, I know that it was definitely a long battle with the Chicago Park District. It's something we saw play out over the last few years. Maria Diaz, to you now. One, I know that earlier this week there was a water rescue using a life ring, so I'm curious what your reaction was to that. And then what do you think the city could be doing to increase water safety beyond what they've done so far?
Okay, so when I heard it this week, I was very happy. It was a bittersweet because I know nothing will bring Mikey back. And from what I heard last year, there were talks with the park district about installing life rings, and the idea just got pushed away kind of as not needed earlier in the summer. And if it had been installed, my son would be here. As far as what is needed, I mean, this is just a first step, but there's so many things that we could do to prevent drownings, which are something that is easy to do. I will start maybe with education even in our public schools, teaching kids how to survive or gain some extra time in the water, which I myself was not aware of. I'm 42, and as you know, flow, follow, as the 3 F's. But I think education is a must as well.
Okay. Hallie, to you now, because you're also a CPS teacher. I know that the city does offer water safety trainings, but do you think that water safety education belongs in city classrooms?
Absolutely. The key to drowning prevention really is layers of protection, and the life rings are an important step, right? That's like rescue equipment. Another layer is the education, that prevention piece. A lot of people have the misconception that water safety is common sense, and they're like, it's a lake, how bad could it be? There's so many hidden dangers. There's so many drowning survival strategies that we as a community just don't know. And the key to teach people is really a captive audience, because if you think you already know, you're not going to sign up. Captive audiences we find at schools, we find at camps, and we actually do have a sponsor in the House and the Senate for another bill that would add water safety education to an existing safety education law. So drowning actually takes more lives of school-aged children than tornadoes, fires, earthquakes, and active shooters combined. Yet we teach children how to protect themselves against all of those threats in school because of this safety law. So the bill we hope to get in next session would add water safety to that list.
Okay, I know this fight is far from over for you. This is something that almost feels like you've taken on as a second job. I'm curious, for those who are listening and are watching, what would be the number one thing that you want people to learn when it comes to water safety training?
No matter what body of water you're in, being able to flip on your back and float will buy you time. It can help you control the panic, and we know panic kills. It can keep your head above water so you can breathe. So if you are looking to protect you and your family right now, top priority would be teaching and practicing that flip and float. Escaping your drowning emergency can happen later. You got to float first and control your panic.
Okay, and I know something else people have talked about is being able to spot riptides as well. All very important things. Alderwoman Haddon, to you now. The act also requires, the act we've been talking about, this new law, requires clear signage at high incident areas. Do you think signage is effective in keeping people out of those dangerous areas along the lake?
I think that it's effective at helping people to be able to better calculate their risks. You know, like Hallie said, and as we've seen too many times, both in the case of Miguel's tragedy, but also other residents, especially at that pier is a great example of a very high-risk area. You can go out there on a day, like a couple days ago, I was out there, and it doesn't feel high risk. It doesn't look high risk. So the signage is so important because we make better decisions when we have more information. And that is, it's an easy thing that we can do, is tell people what the risks are as we work on this multi-layered approach to help them be safer and make better decisions.
Well, when we talk about all of the effort, oh, I'm so sorry. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I just wanted to say, you know, I know that this was a multi-person effort and all of you had a hand in making this happen. So thank you to all of you and thank you for joining us. Our thanks to Maria Diaz, Hallie Quesada, and Alderwoman Maria Haddon.
Thanks so much, Marisa.
Up next, the story of a family-owned hardware store. Throughout most of the city's history, family-owned hardware stores have been anchored in just about every neighborhood in Chicago. But over time, competition from big box stores and a lack of successors to take over the family business have forced many of them to close their doors. Now, the owner of a longtime fixture on 18th Street is nailing down plans to ensure his store has a different fate. Producer Erica Gunderson takes us to Alvarez Hardware.
Ahí tienes, muchas gracias. I tell my grandson, you know, you have to be a part of the community. They have to know who you are. You have to treat each and everyone with respect.
People, if you walk around Pilsen and like they see him, people will be like, hey, Mr. Alvarez, they'll salute him.
Giving people the service is my passion. I like to be with people and talk to the people and give service to the people, yeah.
Over the last few decades, just about everything in Pilsen has been touched by change. But in that time, the face behind the counter at Alvarez Hardware has always been the same.
Okay, gracias.
Rodolfo Alvarez's jam-packed 18th Street store has been the place to go for Pilsen residents looking for a new shovel or pipe fitting since he bought the business from his father-in-law in the 1980s.
I didn't know nothing about hardware business.
Alvarez says in the early days of running the shop, the finances were a bit touch and go.
I used to run to the suppliers 4 or 5 times a day because I could not buy, let's say, a box of elbows or nipples or whatever, you know. I used to buy 5 pieces at a time, 6 pieces here and there. And then when I come, my wife says, they're gone, go back, here's the money. It was a struggle, but it paid off.
But over those first few years, he says the community taught him what it needed from its local hardware store.
I learned what to get and sell our people. And with the time, you know, it's been changing. So now we sell a little bit of different merchandise according to the clientele and times.
At Alvarez Hardware, this washer costs 18 cents. But with that 18 cents, you're also getting 40 years of know-how. And that's what Mr. Alvarez says keeps people coming back.
We have customers that move out from the neighborhood, and they go to suburbs, out south, out west, up north. They still come back because they know for a fact that we'll take the time to explain things to them well.
Now, Rodolfo Alvarez is teaching his grandson, Julian, the softer side of the hardware business.
We don't pay for daycares. This was a daycare for me. So, I grew up here. Every Saturday morning, we'll wake up early, go for the merchandise, and bring it and mark it up. I will ask questions like, what does that do? What's this used for? Why do people come for that? And, you know, my grandfather, you know, he would tell me.
Okay, tell my grandson, there always will be a need for a hardware store in Pilsen, even though the big boxes are a monster, the knowledge that we have and knowing what the community needs make us unique.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to take this over and keep it ongoing. It's like the legacy that we have.
I'm looking for a bike inner tube.
He's proud of me right now too, you know, but yeah, I'm going to make him proud. Yeah.
For Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, this is Erica Gunderson.
Legacy indeed. Now, Rodolfo Alvarez wants to let people know he isn't retiring anytime soon, so if you need advice on your next DIY project, he'll still be there behind the counter 7 days a week. And that's our show for this weekend. If you're watching us on Saturday night, know that you can also catch Latino Voices and Black Voices on Sundays beginning at 10 p.m. And you can catch my reporting on CBS 2 Chicago. Now, from all of us here at Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, I'm Marissa Parra. Thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us. Stay healthy, stay safe, y buenas noches.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a proud sponsor of diversity, equity, and inclusion-focused free continuing legal education for lawyers throughout the region.